Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, supported by our show partner Lacole, here with Benji, as always, for the Tour de France 2022 route reveal reaction. I went down to Paris last week to check out the route reveal, although there was more hype, I got to say, in the room for the women's route reaction, I guess. But anyway, the men's route is, I think, pretty good. I'm excited to get into it. I think it offers a lot of variety. I think the second week was a little bit rough this year. So after stage 7 was a little bit rough. So we'll get into the route. We'll also say which stage suits which rider. We'll go through it stage by stage, and particularly look at the Grand Depart as well. But what do you think, Benji? They presented in October. It's so far out. And then, I mean, do they have to, I guess, so the teams can prepare appropriately to know which rider it suits and which rider doesn't? Or when do you think would be the best time to present it? January?
I think marketing-wise, it might not be the ideal moment, but I do think that it's important to do it early. So like you said, the teams can prepare their schedule, can plan out for the next season. Because yes, we've got teams like Jumbo-Visma who decide their Grand Tour team usually in the winter before the season start, and then have to review it again a month before the Tour de France because one of them got injured, and that the team is completely different than the first time they announced it. But that's the beauty of it, because people can prepare, people can look forward to things, and it gives us something to talk about in the off season. So I'm not really complaining.
Yeah, exactly. It's great. Straight after Lombardia, we have this sort of content, and people enjoyed the discussion last year. A word on our show partner, Lacole, who, as you know, produce performance cycling apparel. Lacole have just created, and this has been in the works for quite a while, I can tell you, the Lacole Cycling Club, a community united by stories, shared goals, and hard and fast ambition, where you can ride with legends, train with pros, and earn rewards for riding. Those legends being the likes of Cancellara, Victoria Pendleton, and Bradley Wiggins. We have the link in the description to the Lacole Cycling Club. There's rewards for riding, and just another aspect to what Lacole are building out for their brand to be more than just kit, creating a cycling community. So thanks, Lacole, for supporting the podcast, and awesome to see them moving into these sort of things as well. But getting into the profile, let's get straight into it. Overall numbers. So we have one cobble stage, we have an Arenberg stage, I believe stage 5, obviously in northeast France. We have, by my count, 2.7 sprint stages, locked on sprint stages, 2.7. The third one it's got a little few climbs in it, but I think a fit sprinter should be getting over that. So, but that's not many. This year we had at least too many sprint stages. That's with the stage 19 transition, and I'm not even counting in my numbers the transition stage on stage 19. I'm not counting that as a sprint stage, and I've got 5 high mountain stages. Now, there is a mountaintop finish I've discarded there, but it's like a Unipuerto stage. I'm not going to call that a high mountain stage if it's one long climb at 14 Ks at 5%. Okay, maybe we have differing definitions. A lot of MISC stages, a lot of light to hard medium mountain stages, actually. And whether teams take advantage of those, I'm not sure. I was even speaking to people there, and I was lauding stage 20 at the Vuelta, Benji. I was saying stage 20 is so great at the Vuelta. And people said, oh, well, ASO put those stages in the Tour, and the riders don't race that way in the Tour. I kind of disagree. I don't see the 6K 6% followed by 7K 7% followed by 6K 6% all day stage here. I don't really see that sort of medium mountain. Is that your reading of it as well?
Yeah, I agree. We've got more the large mountain stage with larger climbs in general, like 3 of them, for example, in a parkour of 160 kilometers. We've also got the parkours where we've got shorter hills, shorter than those 7 kilometers, and it's got valleys in between that are too large to make these subsequent climbs be as effective as we personally hope for. And I think because of that, these stages that might lean towards the likes of those stages that we mentioned will likely end up being a transitioning stage, because they're not applicable enough like that stage 20. They're not like that. And I agree, we don't really have that here. And I feel like that's somewhat of a shame, because I do enjoy those stages a lot. Those offer chaotic circumstances, mostly because it's very difficult to control those stages. One of the reasons I view on it, at least. And yeah, it allows people to go early and not necessarily be scared of a 30-kilometer climb at the end of the stage, stuff like that. But all in all, I do agree that I'm pretty okay with the parkour. I'm not going to say that it's the best parkour I've ever seen for a Tour de France nor a Grand Tour, but I think we're going to enjoy it, except for like perhaps the second part of week 2 that might be a bit of a slumber moment, but I think the rest will do well.
I mean, the start of a tour is never boring, but it starts a little bit slow. There's 53 kilometres of time trialling. The first stage is 13.5 Ks, pancake flat, which we'll get into in a second. And then stage 20, again, the last real competitive GC stage is 40.5 kilometres. So that last TT will be incredibly important. It's long, 40.5 kilometres, and it's got 450 metres of climbing. We're talking big time gaps if Rog performs. I mean, he probably won't, but if Roglic does Olympic level TT power on that stage, you will be, or Pogacar does his TDF TT performance, huge gaps on that stage. And I think 53 Ks of time trialing, Benji, you got to bring a time trial to compete here in this Tour de France, even though there are some hard high mountain stages. How do you, like, what sort of, if you're Mikel Landa in Bahrain, are you skipping this? Do you tell him, no, you're not going?
Yeah, I would dare to say so indeed. And then we're looking at Bahrain and we're looking at the other people in the team. Do you think that a Jack Haig will be more fitting, knowing that his time trial is also not at the level of Pogacar and Roglic?
I mean, it's better than Landa. Yeah, I think he's improving it. And also with the mixed parkour and the sort of heavy, medium mountain stages, I think he gets through them quite well. So I do think he suits it better than Landa. But yeah, I think Dumoulin is actually really good for this parkour with that level of TTing as well. So no team time trial, but there is, and let's get into it now, the stage 1 TT, the Grand Depart on stage 1 in Denmark. There's a lot of hype about it in Copenhagen. They had the Prince at the presentation, spoke fluent French, which is always interesting to see. Everyone speaks like 6 languages at these events. 13.5 Ks, 14 or 13 meters of elevation, pancake flat, 22 or 23 corners in that 13 Ks, where I believe they'll need to brake or stop pedaling significantly in advance of the relevant corner. So quite technical. The yellow jersey is on offer. This is a huge opportunity for the time trialists. This is like when Dennis took yellow in the opening TT in 2015, and I think he also did it at the Giro d'Italia. So a huge opportunity for them. Ganna's my favourite for the stage if he goes. Do you think he's... Well, yeah, how do you see this TT, Benji? I mean, uncontroversially, it's to the specialist, but do you think Ineos send him to the Tour because of this TT?
Well, I would send him to this Tour because of the time trial and also the fact that we saw him on the Montalcino stage in the Giro last year, and we've got the Cobble stage here. I do want to see Ganna on Cobbles. I've said this for years, and perhaps this might be the opportunity to have it happen. Nonetheless, that first time trial is an opportunity for him to take yellow on the first day. It's quite clear as that he is, when it comes to completely flat time trials, in my eyes, the best time trialist in the world. Van Aert is not following too far after. But when I look at this prologue, it always reminds me of the Benelux time trials for some reason, because you've always got these shorter time trials in the Benelux Tour, and it's also quite technical, like this parkour is offering. You go from left to right. You've got one corner in this parkour that is quite a steep corner, let's say. And in all honesty, I think that's going to affect how some of the riders work, but it's very difficult to look at time trials and say, oh, this time trialist, he's not as explosive and perhaps therefore might not be as powerful on this parkour. I've got a difficulty in spotting a rider like that. Do you see someone, for example, like Bissiger, who's better on the explosive prologues in my eyes? Do you have an opposite of that? A rider that is like not that great at that in your eyes? Because it's difficult for me.
I just got Ganna for this and Van Aert.
Okay.
Pretty much. That's what I see for it and battling it out. And the thing is, Van Aert needs to go full for this TT. And Roglic, Roglic and Pogacar, Roglic on a short TT is excellent as well, but given it's so flat, and Roglic will be doing good power, but will he want to risk everything in these corners?
Yeah, no.
The same way Ganna did? It wouldn't be wise. So I think that the TT specialists have an edge there as well. Bissiger, I look at that UAE TT. I'm sure he's improved since there, but that was 13 Ks and Ganna smashed him.
Andersen in Denmark would be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
doesn't have the power. Again, it's just if he peaks for it too much.
Yeah, I agree.
That being said, Van Aert, MVDP as well. I mean, if MVDP wants to train for this and peak for it, MVDP literally could win this TT. If Ganna drops his chain or just underperforms, like some races he has done, not his A races this year or whatever, you never know what can happen in a TT. MVDP also, like, he's a freak. He could win this TT given how technical it is. But I think Van Aert will be close. And that goes into our next stage too, which is quite clearly, I think, a sprint stage, 200 Ks from Roskilde to Nyborg, Pancake Flat. I think it looks like they make a 2-meter depression in the profile look like a proper punch. It could be windy. We got to put the caveat. Wind could and probably will affect some of these stages in Denmark, given the proximity to the coast. I'm not sure which. Is this the one with the big bridge,
Yep,
Benji?
this is the one where we basically start at the to look at it, Denmark's basically divided into lots of islands, but you've got the main attached to Europe island on the left side, then a smaller island on the right side, and another smaller island on the right side. We go from the rightest island to the one on the left of that with a bridge, and that is in the final 20-ish kilometers of this parkour, which means that we're going to be going across a pretty large part of ocean into Nyborg. And that bridge is likely going to be pretty windy. I've decided to ask on Twitter what the Danish people feel like. And Trek Segafredo responded that the resident Danes in their team say that it's going to be windy in that area. So we can expect that. And a lot of people were saying wind from the west, which means perhaps headwind. But I guess we're going to see that at the day itself. We can't be weathermanning a year before the race even starts here. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, this one. We've also got the 3K WEM points in it. So our first polka dot. Do you think a Dane will go for that?
They should. I mean, I reckon Ida Schelling will try again. He's not Danish, but yeah, I think a Dane should go for it and probably will. But yeah, I'm interested to see who takes the poker points. I always think it's the best thing to target if you're not a sprinter, not the top puncher. Why not go for it in the first week? And that's why they're
season
paying
objective.
Him. Yeah, Israel. That's why. Yeah, get him in. Go for week 1 poker exposure. Probably would be a good idea for him. But yeah, I think this is one for the sprinters, especially if it's headwind. That'll destroy a break and make it hard to get away as well. So Murku, looking for the sprinters. Murku Jakobsen connection against Ewan and his new Bora lead out, as well as others, obviously. The next stage, 182 Ks. Again, not too much elevation, but more punchy this one. We do have some like 600 meter, 6% punches, 1K, 5% punches, but nothing too much near the finish. A flat finish in Sonderborg. Again, sprint. Isn't this just a sprint again, Benji?
I would dare so. I expect this to be a sprint indeed. We've got the earlier stages where teams with sprinters will not have too many riders out of the race already, hopefully. And as a consequence, they should have enough to control these races. The likes of Tim de Klerk will be taking on the front of the peloton quite significantly. We'll see Lotto Soudal put somebody at the front of the peloton to also control throughout the race. Alpes and Phoenix. All those teams combined should be doable to keep it all controlled and not have a breakaway rider win. And you also don't have like one of those hills in the last 20 kilometers that Brent van Moer can still be alive on. So I do not expect stage 2 might be special because of the wind, but I think stage 3 is a normal sprint in my eyes.
So then they start on the Friday, actually, and then they have the 3 stages in Denmark. Monday is a transfer day from Denmark down to France. So we have an early rest day before stage 4 in Calais, from Dunkirk to Calais, rather. So Brits get on the Eurostar. You can see the finish in Calais, 173 Ks, quite a rolly stage. Apparently there's a gravel climb in the first 30 Ks. I don't really see that.
The Kassel climb. It's just across the border from, I think, the bottom of West Flanders or something to France, because it's part of Gent-Wevelgem, I think. Not sure.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's of no moment for GC, but an interesting climb nonetheless. It's
Van der Poel.
On this profile, it's been given Cat 1, Benji.
Come on. It's a cobble climb. Come on. It's almost Flemish cobbles. It's special.
Oh no, it's one. It just means one cobble climb. Anyway, there's punchy climbs, the last of which is 1.1 Ks at 6.5%, but it's 11 Ks from the finish. I really think a fit sprinter should be getting to the finish here, and Merlier, if not him, definitely Jasper Philipsen, those sort of guys should be making it to the finish with absolutely no trouble at all, given how far that climb is from the finish. And they'd have to pace very absolutely furiously on those climbs to drop the likes of Nizzolo and co. If you're Jumbo, who probably wouldn't pace for that anyway. Maybe MVDP attacks there and Alpecin sit in. That wouldn't be a bad strategy. But this is my part of the 2.8, 2.7 sprints, Benji. I still see this mostly as a sprint.
Yeah, me as well. I do think that I think it's for the entertainment level that we have so many K1 points in this parkour, because it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah,
6,
it could be
7
fun.
K1 points.
There will be
Keep
a
us
battle.
busy.
Was it Perez and Schelling going head to head this year? It was pretty fun.
I think, as well last year with Perez. So Perez has
fun.
always been involved.
Yeah. Still seeing this as a sprint though. And stage 5, 144.5 Ks. This is the cobbled stage, finishing in Arenberg from Lille. They have 19.5 kilometers of cobbles, mostly from 90 Ks to go to 140 Ks. There's no 5-star sectors, like they haven't been given star attribution. Do you know offhand, Benji, if there's any really nasty ones here?
Well, I do remember that most of these are actually like proper Roubaix cobbles, and if we take a closer look at them, I do see quite a few that we know, but I don't see the likes of a Carrefour de l'Arbre on the parkour or a Mons-en-Pével. So we're not looking at a 5-star sector here, which is a bit unfortunate. But then again, on the other end, harder cobbles on a Tour de France parkour might be creating some trouble. I honestly don't know the classification of these sectors, to be honest. I do think that they're going to matter, and it kind of depends on the weather, on how much, of course, because if we see 2014 weather, the likes of Vincenzo Nibali moment arrive, where he is allowed to, now in the colors of Astana once again, rise to the top, would be beautiful. But yeah, if it rains, then it's going to influence a lot. And if it doesn't rain, it might be somewhat less insane as people are expecting. But I also don't want the stage to decide the tour, you know? I want it to affect it a tiny bit. I want it to do spectacular stuff, but I don't want it to decide it.
Yeah, someone crashing out or having a mechanical and not being able to get service and losing 3 minutes, that just sucks. And I think Lefebvre came out and said cobbles have no place in a Grand Tour. I mean, I disagree. Like, they've been part of Grand Tours historically for a long time. That being said, you don't want to overweight them either.
Yeah.
Like, I'd love to see a Van Aert, Van der Poel, Asgreen battle on this stage, and a battle for yellow perhaps, because all those guys are going to do good TTs, and maybe Van Aert picks up some bonus seconds if he decides to go for sprints. A battle between those three for yellow would be fantastic, a fantastic spectacle. But no, I don't want Roglic to go down here. That would really ruin the race for me.
You do mention like a very important discussion here. We know that Van der Poel will likely have the free reins when it comes to going for this stage. We know that at Quickstep, likely in Alaphilippe and the other cobblers in that team might be able to do so as well. When you look at Jumbo, they've got trouble there, you know, because if you look at this Grand Tour, we're already talking about how that team will work together, but I would never give out Van Aert freedom on this stage.
Really?
Yeah.
You'd have him and Mike looking after Roglic. I probably would too, to be honest. Like, yeah, they made the decision, it seemed, already on stage 1. We were talking about it this year. On stage 1, he worked for Roglic, and I think that would have been the plan. It really will depend, though, on how their form is going in, how Roglic is looking, etc. Presuming he's fine, though, yeah, like GC will be important. And I think there's stages where it's less risky to give Van Aert some freedom. But I do think they looked at this year's tour. Jonas Second wasn't affected, even when we were critical of them, by them sending riders up the road to hunt stages. The EF always do it, but it is difficult to do it when you're going for that yellow rather than a podium. But yeah, this stage should be good. It's a short one, 144 Ks, 3.5 hours of action.
When it comes to riders on this parkour, GC riders and so forth, we know that Roglic has a reference in the Tour de France of 2018 where he did the cobble stage in the Tour de France. I think that was a harder parcours, actually. So we know that he can survive this quite well. But then again, Dan Martin also did in the group that day. So it's not like it was the most extreme tempo on the cobbles that day. And I'm just curious what to expect when it comes to the Slovenes against each other and how other people will be involved in this stage. Because Pogacar, I've got complete confidence that Pogacar can do cobbles properly because he's done proper ones before. We can laugh at Paris-Roubaix juniors as much as we want for it being a juniors race, and therefore the ride is automatically coming towards the top. But when you look at the top 10s in those races, those riders actually are pretty damn decent on cobbles. So it is an indication that him coming 13 in that can offer him an opportunity to try something on this parkour. He always talks about wanting to go early on cobble races and so forth, and loving Roubaix because they always go early on that parkour. And I think that I'm very curious what he will do on this parkour, certainly, and also what an Astana will do, because they will arrive at this parkour with Lopez and Nibali, and they will realize that Vincenzo Nibali is the king after this stage, and Lopez will be 7 minutes behind.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, Quintana on Arkea, where he'll be going for GC. Degenkolb going to DSM. His last big win was the cobbled stage at the Tour in 2018, maybe?
Correct.
It's a shorter one. It's not as hard. This is really something for him to peak for. And Intermarché too, Benji. You know, they've signed Christoph. Yeah, obviously the Pedersens. But this sort of stage is the one where Christoph's looking at the earlier stages like, shit, my pure sprint speed against the top sprinters ain't it really?
No. He's gonna be chained to Louis Meintjes. I can feel it.
I don't think that's the hierarchy in that team. I think Christoph is a big target for those sort of classicsy boys who don't have the top end this stage here. And it's probably the last stage for Tim Merlier, Benji, because if I was him, I would leave after stage 5. Do you think we'll see that after stage 5? A max X? No, he should. Like, what's left after stage 5? What is left for the pure sprint guys, Ewan, Bennett, and Merlier?
The only thing that you have is that one stage at the end that is most likely also able to go to a breakaway. So, it's not worth it for a pure sprinter that can't do anything else in this Grand Tour to stay. And then you even start questioning, is it worth bringing Merlier to this race if you've got Philipsen? I would dare to say Merlier is a better sprinter.
No, bring both. Have Merlier do the pure sprints.
But the problem there is every point you sprint with Merlier is green jersey points taken away from Philipsen. You can't go for green with Van der Poel because Philipsen's going to be doing the flat sprints or Merlier. So you got to decide somehow who to go for sprints in that team. So that's a conversation we might have in the future. What will happen in Alpecin for that race here?
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, they sort of what they did in the Tour this year is a bit weird, but I think Merlier, and there's really not many sprints after this stage 5, and we haven't mentioned his name yet, but Peter Sagan, I think he is a big shout for green again, because Van Aert will not probably have the license to go for green. I think he's more likely to have the license to go for stages when it suits, but not green every day. Who knows though? We have only a few pure sprint stages. We might have this year it was perfect for a pure sprinter like Cavendish, the green jersey. But yeah, MVDP and Alpecin have a difficult conversation, balance there. Sagan and Total, I think, will be definitely in the hunt for green, as well as Matthews at Bike Exchange. But yeah, stage 6, 220 Ks, rolly parkour with only one 2.2K, 6% categorized climb in the first 200 Ks, and then a puncher's delight. This is kind of like a shorter version of the Gorizia Slovenia stage, Benji, in the Giro. 2.3 Ks, 4% backed into a K at 10.5%, backed into 1.7 Ks at 6%. Alaphilippe, if De Koenig won it, it's an Alaphilippe, MVDP, Wout van Aert, Roglic, Pogacar, and maybe Benoit battle here. Or do you see break? Who's going to want to control this for 200 Ks?
I think that's a very difficult one. You haven't really had a stage, or I don't think the likes of an Alaphilippe or someone like that will have lost enough time by this point to be able to go in breakaways quite madly. Or will they just not care? That's also possible, because at this point they might not be scared of Alaphilippe for the GC of this race yet. Perhaps not in the future either, but like, oh, that's a difficult one, to be honest. Like, the Koenig could control it for the likes of an Alaphilippe, but Van der Poel's alive as well, so wouldn't they just like, wouldn't it be risky if they throw everything on Alaphilippe and then end up being beaten by a Van der Poel or something in Longwy? Stuff like that. I do
Half.
remember this stage in like 2017 or something, stage 3. I don't know
Peaks
who won it though.
Peaks again cleans this up, but as we discussed the other day on the Q&A, he's not here anymore. It's a very interesting stage and another balance for Jumbo-Visma, Benji, because Roglic on 1,700 metres, 6% finish, preceded by a few climbs with bonus seconds in play, is devastating. But so is Van Aert. And Ineos have got, maybe do Ineos bring Hayter? I don't think Pidcock's doing the Tour, and it might be pretty early for Hayter to do the Tour. But again, Hayter at Tour of Britain looked good. It should be, maybe it'll end up being Mohoric attacking Jasper Stuyven again, like in stage 7 when it was the break, and goes with a bit of a whimper, but should be a nice finish. Even someone like Narvaez on Ineos in the break would be pretty
Do you think
nasty.
that they'll go on the second last climb or the last one? Because I've got the feeling that the last one itself, if Alaphilippe waits for Longwy, then it's more likely to go to a candidate like a Van der Poel. And if he goes on the climb before already, which is on paper the steeper one, if I'm looking at it correctly,
it is 1K, 10%.
Well, then I might believe more, but then again, 1K is not long enough, to drop a Van der Poel.
Depends. I don't know. Maybe. First mountain stage, stage 7. We've had 6 stages of variety, but now the first mountain stage, if you want to call it mountain, it is the Super Planche de Belfi finish, 176 Ks long. We have just a 3K 6%er and a 3K 5%er beforehand. Nothing crazy. That's why I said, you cannot expect big GC gaps. And the GC guys, hopefully they're not banged up. They're arriving to this, should be relatively fresh. They've done no large mountains beforehand. It's a short, medium-sized stage with one mountaintop finish. The last K on Super Planche is gravel. It's a bit longer than the Planche de Belfi from the TT in stage 20 2 years ago. 7.6 Ks, 8.2%. Roglic should be the favourite for the stage. When you look at his 15-minute or 15 to 20-minute profile, fresh like at Torino in week 1 with the punch at the end, it's just obscene. But obviously Pog, I'm just not expecting big gaps here, Benji. What is that how you view it as well?
I see Slovenia on top and then a larger gap behind the Slovenians than in between the Slovenians on this parkour.
I think Yates can be close.
Yeah, if he's at the Tour.
Yeah.
It's pretty important fact.
What about a Bernal I think this sort of stage is not what suits Bernal at all. It's the opposite. This is what the Slovenians are really good at, is this sort of run up and punch. What about Alaphilippe? Too hard?
Yeah, I believe that's too hard. Definitely when you're looking at the likes of a Roglic and Pogacar against him. So he's not likely going to beat them in the same group. But we're talking about attacking away from the elite group and so forth. What if it's just a breakaway stage? Because who's going to control this race so early on in the Tour de France? You think that?
Jumbo should. Roglic week 1, bonus seconds. This ain't the Vuelta against Enric Mas. If you're Roglic against Pogacar, you need to take the time when you're feeling good. That's I feel like they rude losing time perhaps on Peresud in 2020. If he's feeling good on a stage that suits Roglic, bonus seconds available. Depending on how close they are from the TTs, this is where to strike. And I think, why they should pace. It's not that long. It's not that complicated. They should. Because next stage, maybe they take it off, Benji. Stage 8, 184 Ks.
Break.
Light, medium mountain. Break. Carlos Verona. Free him, Movistar. Please. Don't you think, Benji?
It's possible. You've got the likes of a Tratnik that I would also call for a stage like this. Or we've got a pretty shit week 1 Giro break where Lafay ends up winning. It reminds me of that stage, actually, this parkour. It's not the most extreme last ram that you've got, 4.9 kilometers, 4.5%. I think that It could go two ways. I think the break will stay relatively together over the middle climbs there, but then after that descent or just before the top of that Col du Moulin-Drus, well, I think someone attacks there, someone in the valley afterwards that tries to evade having to punch on the climb against the best punchers in the group. And if they all stick together, then the best puncher ends up winning the stage. Otherwise, it's a ruler that wins. So very much looking forward to the stage afterwards.
Yes. Hopefully an opportunity for a strong guy. I think DSM will be sending strong people in this break. But yeah, break, there's nothing to offer the GC here. Maybe MVDP gets in the break and saves up Bacon. Stage 9, the last stage before the first proper rest day, 183 kilometers long. We have the Col de Moses, 13 Ks, 4.2% part the seas, followed by 8 Ks, 7% descent, 13K valley, and then the Pas de Morgin, 16 and a half Ks, 6%, short descent, and then like a 4K.
4 kilometers, 4.5, yeah.
Right. So this reminds me of the Agual stage that Lutsenko won, Benji, and I think a break has a good opportunity here again.
I believe so as well. You do have the fact that this is actually an interesting stage where I would say that if it's the 20th stage in a race, that you will have attacks on Col de la Croix.
Yeah.
But it being so early in the parkour makes it viable as a breakaway stage as well. You don't necessarily have too many kilometers to control either, I feel like, because you're going to have a battle to go into the breakaway from that first climb, the Col de Chebry, something like that. And then you've got a bit of a plateau section on top to that next climb. So if the break is already formed after like 60 kilometers, which I would expect, then they only have to control for like 20 kilometers before the climb start. So if they don't take a pissing break there and lose 8 minutes, then it wouldn't surprise me if this goes to GC as well. Like, it could go both ways for me.
I'm looking at Igita, Kemna, Conrad, those sorts of riders, because it's so much effort to gain time on GC here, especially with that last longer climb not being particularly steep. It even levels off in the last sort of 3 to 4 Ks rather. And then you've got to maintain that for 10 kilometers, 9 kilometers with an up and down. I don't know. I see a break here with powerless Lutsenko style riders and the ones I've already just mentioned. Then we have our first rest day. I think the goal with ASO is to keep GC tight, and normally I think crash is dependent. Some people will crash, some will have mechanicals. GC, I see no reason for it to not be particularly tight here. Now, a minute's a long time, but for the general public, it doesn't seem like that much. I don't see 4 minutes here, Benji, like we saw in week after week one in this year when we had that stage 8, stage 9 were much harder than anything we see here, right?
Yeah, I would expect so as well. I think that Col de Rome, Col de la Colombière duo is a much harder one that we've had here. I do think that Blanche is going to put some people ahead of other people, but it won't be at a deficit of 4 minutes, that's for sure. I would be really surprised if it's otherwise. But looking into the next few stages, then we've got stage 10, which is a bit of an odd one to me. This feels like a very odd stage. 146 kilometers, and it basically has 3 climbs. But can we call them real climbs? 4% for like 7.3 kilometers is the first one. Then we go downwards. We've got a climb of 7 kilometers roughly at 3.8%. Then a plateau section or like a valley in between the second and the last climb, which is one to the finish line. Megève, it's the one where we have was it Paris-Nice ITT quite a few times before in the past, but this is not a real climb. I have, what?
Is this where Koos won? Megève, Dauphiné, 2020?
I don't know.
I feel like he won on an Altiport. Maybe I'm misremembering it. Maybe he came up the other side.
It's possible.
This is Jumbo again got a control. If you got Roglic in good condition in a short stage with one main climb and a sort of steady gradient, I just see Roglic, Benji, sprint, take 10 seconds plus 10. Is that how you see it, or do you think it's so uninteresting from a GC perspective a break might have a chance?
I would not be certain about the GC taking it, but what this reminds me of is that first, was it Dauphiné stage in 2020, where you've got Van Aert winning a mountain finish. This could generally happen on this finish.
Well, yeah, if it's so if the break doesn't make it for whatever reason because it's short and they can't get away a big enough gap, but also GC, no one can really be bothered because it's like, oh,
Yeah.
what are we going to gain? 2 minutes on a 4% climb, and
Yeah.
then suddenly you've got a group of 40 guys at the finish. That could happen on this stage. I'm
Yeah.
not expecting fireworks compared to tomorrow. Stage 11, 150 kilometers long. We have the Galibier-Granon combo preceded by the Col du Telegraph. This is a hard stage given how short it is. 12K 7%, then up to this Henri de Grange, 18 kilometers at 7% for the Galibier, and then into long descent of 30 kilometers plus to Col de Granon, 11.5 Ks, 9%, 2,400 meters. This is why Astana pay Miguel Angel Lopez the big bucks, because this is the stage he can win next year.
I agree that this is a stage that certainly suits him because of the longer, not necessarily the longer climbs, but the higher altitude, obviously.
Yeah,
You've seen it on
24.
Côte de la Loze, for example, and so forth. But one issue that I have with that is that last climb is only 11.4 kilometers. And I feel like when I think about those Lopez victories, the last climb was larger than 11.4 kilometers. But is that going to be enough to stop Lopez from taking the stage? Well, I do think that Roglic and Pogacar are going to say hi to him. I don't think they're going to be thrown away from this stage either. I'm curious whether a team is going to take it up on the Galibier. I don't think Telegraph is going to happen yet, but I don't know.
So far from the finish.
But it's so Ineos to do it.
Really? I mean, it's the big question, Benji, obviously, is do they take Bernal? Like, Yates on Gamonotero didn't look too flash hot. Bernal, obviously, to altitude, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. But yeah, it's a pedaling descent just by the eye as well. Like, it's long. I don't think you're going to have to put in a fair bit of work there before the final climb. I see Lopez at a solid deficit going into this stage to the Slovenians. And you've got to remember they're banking that huge TT in the last stage against him. I think if he goes like he did on Gamonotero, 2Ks to go, just limit losses, and he can have 10 seconds on the stage. Congrats,
Yeah, but you think he's still going to be in the GC battle of the cobble stage?
Well, that's what I mean. Like, I think at best he's lost probably a minute up to this point at best. So the Slovenians won't be too concerned. Listen, maybe Juan Ayuso's like. There's probably going to be some GC contender that just blows us away at UAE.
GC Kuss, it's happening.
Maybe. Stage 12, back-to-back high mountain stages, 165 Ks. We're in the Alps, by the way, from Briançon to Alpe d'Huez. 18 Ks, 6%, a long stepped descent of 50 Ks down to the bottom of Col de la Croix de Fer, 30 Ks at 5.2%, although the steeper section's in there. Again, a long step descent and a short valley of 11 kilometers before Alpe d'Huez, which you know well, 14 Ks, 8%. All going to be at the starts up to altitude, but yeah, the Alpe d'Huez is below 2,000 meters. This is a traditional just GC day, and this is, I think, where Pogacar and UAE should make it hard, Benji. I think with this, all the climbing put together and the day before with his recovery, I think this is the stage for Pog.
I think it's also a stage that certainly suits him. We've got 3 climbs that are very difficult. The first one is that high altitude Galibier once again that we had in the stage before. So that's going to matter. I do remember the stage from the past in the Tour de France. I'm subtly trying to use me talking to look at which year it was that they did this. Was it 2016 Briançon to Alpe d'Huez? I do remember one. I can't find it. Okay. So I don't know. But I do remember that the attacks were happening already on the second climb on this parkour last time they did it. It was a very different dynamic when you still had an Ineos and so forth fighting for this parkour. And I think that the aspect here is how strong are the teams going to be against each other. We can talk about the likes of Pogacar lighting it up with UAE and so forth, but what if Jumbo's super strong again, like 2020?
Dumo, Dennis. That's why is that's why they signed Dennis, Benji, to pay Galibier hard. Is that what you're referring to?
Not to T-pose like Tony Martin when necessary.
I think Dennis, they think he can get his climbing going well and maybe
On
even
the
go for the yellow
Galibier,
jersey. Yeah.
like Stelvio and Giro when he
Yeah.
brought the victory to Tao Geoghegan Hart.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I can't wait to see it. Again, it's tough to know when you don't know the team composition, and maybe Enric Mas continues his progression, but maybe not either. Stage 13, another one of these medium mountain stages that it just isn't hard enough. Even if this was the stage 20 Benji, it's just not hard enough.
Yeah.
193 Ks. It's a collection of like 4 to 5K climbs at about 4 to 5.5%. Some a bit longer, some a bit steeper. But the finish also is just like rolling as well. I see a break again, and maybe like Sturven can win this from the break.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty explosive at the start because you have a descent leading to the first climb. So the action to get in the breakaway is going to happen on that first climb already. And it's not the craziest of gradients at the climb, but it's good enough to get the climbers to get away and not necessarily the rollers on this one. Certainly, if the break hasn't formed yet on this first climb, then there's an entire valley section in between that and the next climb for the break to form with more rollers. And that's when a Stuyven could go. But on the climb itself, I think that Stuyven might have difficulties to get in the breakaway as easily as the likes of actual climbers. So it depends on where the break forms, which type of riders that I do see in this breakaway. But I think one of the climbs that most likely will be the deciding factor in the break for me is that second last climb with roughly 50K to go, 40K to go. This is where someone like a Mohoric, like those type of riders that often go early and still have like a good solo at the end, could try and get away there. And after that climb, you've got the descent, but still 32 kilometers of a solo to do. This is a Hirschi Polarin territory of Tour de France 2020 in my eyes.
Andreas Krohn, I like for this sort of stage. Luis Leon Sanchez, Tratnik, all those sorts of names, expecting the breakaways, but no GC action from what I can see. Stage 14, break again, I think. 196.5 Ks. If you're in the yellow jersey here, like, why do you want to burn your team pacing? I just don't see the incentive. I know it finishes, this is like medium mountain again, but there's like a longer false flat, like 20K climb. It averages 2%. This is more like up and down, up and down, up and down, shorter climbs. But it does finish with, allegedly, 3Ks at 10.5%, about 2.5Ks from the finish. Again, it's not right at the finish, so you're going to have to continue it on, so you might lose time after that. I would, if I'm Movistar, I just send Valverde in the break, frankly, if he's lost enough time, and then you go for that sort of strategy. You need to be good on that final climb, like a proper ability to climb, and maybe Alaphilippe's lost enough time, but I just don't see why GC would pace Benji. Like UAE would want Pog, they rely on TT in a high mountain, and for Jumbo, I just don't see it either. So I see break again.
Yep, I agree that this is more likely a break stage. I look at these parkours and I'm like, yeah, these are the kind of stages where it could be pretty chaotic in breakaways. And we spoke a lot about Wout van Aert GC last year, but I feel like we can't talk about that this year just because of the loads of high altitude climbs. And I think that's a difference compared to last year. If you look at this parkour and you've got the cobble stage, you've got so many time trial kilometers, you've got lots of medium mountain stages. Are the altitude stages the ones that are telling us, no, it's impossible this year? Or you think that there's a possibility out there where you see Wout van Aert being a role in GC?
Don't really see it.
Me neither.
He's not even better than Pogacar at medium mountain stages.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So that's the problem. Like it just, I don't see it. I mean, I can't really, there's no sprint points that have been inserted yet from what I can see, but regarding going for green, but yeah, it's going to be a certain type of rider winning these stages again. Like even a Conrad can be winning, or Moritz again. Storer, yeah, it's a difficult man in the break as well. But I still think, yeah, GC pretty tight up to this point. And stage 15 is much of a muchness again. 200 Ks, medium mountain, finishing in Carcassonne. Now, if Roglic didn't exist and Van Aert was on a different team, or as a Prime Sagan, like, do you think Prime Sagan? I think Total are going to pace this stage, Benji, because of the flat finish.
I've got one issue here, and that's that we don't have a complete profile yet on every single one of these parkours because we don't know yet where these sprints are going to be.
Yeah.
And that might be an indicator of, for example, if in this stage the intermediate sprint is halfway the stage, Total should murder the fast 50 kilometers for someone like Sagan for their green jersey and so
Yeah.
forth.
And that
Because,
maintains brake
yeah,
control.
exactly. As a consequence, the brake will be controlled, and then they might get closer to that climb at uh, free fall into the stage, which is basically the last climb in the stage, and then has a false flat descent to the line, like you mentioned, with that flat finish. But it just shouts brake to me, but it could be leading towards something else if the control for the intermediate sprint is too long.
Or if there's complete, no one really controlling it, but no brake, descent attack. I don't know. I think if you have a reduced bunch sprinter, this really is the stage to try something where you can get some reward, unless you see a large break going early, in which case you better get in that break. But yeah, Magnus Court we haven't mentioned yet. This looks like a Magnus Court stage, previously known as Michael Matthews stages. Second rest day after stage 15, stage 16 at 180 Ks, nothing on for the GC guys unless someone wants to blow up before the Pyrenees. We have two climbs mainly for the day, 11Ks, 7%, straight then into 9.5Ks at 7.5% before a 27-kilometer descent into Foix. I more see it as a break for the strong break-style climbers like Stora and Ben O'Connor if he's lost loads of time, etc. Godu, yeah. Is that how you see this, Benji, or 2020 Hirschi if he reappears?
Yeah, if he reappears, perhaps. But then again, like, this is indeed for the more climby types in the breakaway for me. He's going to be stuck. You know that. There's no way in hell he's going to be free this time around. Like, the first half of this parkour, it's too long for a team to control that. 100 kilometers with two small hills. I see a breakaway getting 8-9 minutes before we start the Port de l'Air, and I don't see them getting caught really, because why should someone start pacing there? Well, if they're not looking good when it comes to GC and want to try something, but then again, the hardest stages are arriving after this one. So why would you do this? Why would you do this? Why would you pace like that on stage 16 when you know that stage 17 is coming? And I'll let you talk about it because that one has 4 solid mountains, you know?
Yeah, so we've basically got Benji and I think there could be 4 straight breakaway stages from 13 to 16, which could be a little bit rough. But stage 17, we get into the Pyrenees. By the way, I might go and see that finish in Foix. That's pretty close to Andorra. But the next one, short stage, packed full of high mountains, 130 Ks from Saint-Gaudens to Périgueux.
Is this the stage 20 Vuelta stage?
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah, actually, I like this. Is it? This is like really hard. Like it sort of is in the Pyrenees, but none of the climbs are 30 minutes. They're all like maybe a bit shorter efforts. But yeah, this is one where you could really try something, especially if you got a satellite rider in the valley. Particularly that 8.5K, 7.5% second last climb. That kind of looks like the Covadonga one, Benji, like with Bernal. But it's short stage. I see GC. I think Roglic can, if he's got his Covadonga legs, let them loose, is what I say.
When you arrive at the first of these climbs, the Col d'Espagne, you'll likely see riders that are satellite riders going to the breakaway, or perhaps already on the flatter part before the Col d'Espagne. And I feel like what this looks like to me is that Etsulia stage where you could have satellite riders on the first 2 of the climbs, and I'm very curious what the descent of the Orquet d'Ancizan looks like, because if that's technical, then you might see someone try something crazy and get into a situation that is very notable. Now, you're right, that second last stage is where it's at for me when it comes to launching a leader that wants to risk it on this day. But the question is, are you going to risk it a lot knowing what comes the day after? Because it's not an easy stage either. I do enjoy the Périgueux finish, and like you mentioned, this is the closest that we have to those stages, those Itzulia stages, those stage 20 Vuelta stages. But I feel like the first part of the race is too long, the flat part, for it to be crazy when it comes to getting satellite riders ahead, you know?
I don't know. Maybe on the Colt, yeah. And there's no really little short Cat 3 in the first 40 Ks either, unfortunately. I think Bahrain, like Hague, head to head against the Slovenians. If Bahrain go for GC with Hague, he head to head,
he's fucked.
Yeah, so you got to hit him with the Mater 1-2, and I think sending Mater, he's got a good descent on him. We saw in Tour de Suisse, but I guess he was catching woods. But he Mater and Hague 1-2 on this sort of stage, especially when it's about 7%, perfect place for ambush territory. And even if Bernal Carapaz 1-2, or I don't see how they could bring a non-time trialist duo. Like they need someone good at TT for that, because if it's just Bernal head to head, I don't see it. Maybe Yates' TT is unbelievable next year. I don't know, but yeah, I think this is a good opportunity if you do have 2 up on GC to make it count on this stage. But we'll see. Hopefully it's exciting. Stage 18, as Benji said, 144 Ks, short again. These are sub 4 hour mountain stages. Well, maybe about 4 hours. This is from Lourdes to the Hautacam. We have, again, a flattish roll-in, and then we have the Col d'Aubisque, 17 Ks, 7% descent. Then they do the Col de Spandels, 10.5 Ks, 8% descent. Then the Hautacam, 13.6 Ks at 8%. Hopefully, we got a tight GC, or we got someone behind by a minute and they need to launch it on this stage. I don't care who it is, but I think we will see, hopefully, people attacking here. The worst case is 1 is locked away and 2, 3, and we have people defending 5th to 7th, which is just terrible. But yeah, I'm quietly hopeful for this stage, Benji, that it could be a big showdown on GC.
I think so as well. I do think that the second last climb, the one towards the Hautacam climb, has a descent that is not too steep. Perhaps it's because it's that short of a stage that it looks like that, at least. Because it's not that steep, I think that it's working against people who try and go on that second last climb already. I do love the Aubisque-Soulor duo. Is that not the one where we had Hushoff winning in like 2011, 2009, 2010, something like that? Oh, I have memories from this stage very, very far away, but that duo is shining in my eyes right now. But Hautacam, the place where Nibali destroyed nobody because nobody was left in the Tour de France 2014 by this point. What? Keanu Reeves?
Keanu Reeves Hautacam is legendary.
I straight up went to an actor. Keanu Reeves.
Mate, Keanu Reeves Hautacam is just outrageous times. I'd like to see if that got broken next year. Stage 19, this has become the transition stage for the break, because the sprinters teams, well, there's no sprinters left. Merlier's been in the Maldives for 2 weeks at this point, so 189 Ks. We'll see the big boys just getting a break and fight it out. I think maybe Trentin lose a reduced group sprint.
Søren Andersen.
Yeah, that's a good shout if he's back to 2020 level. Stage 20. It's been all leading up to this. 40.5 Ks. Like, it's from La Capelle to Marival. By the way, we've done a big clockwise loop around France, but avoiding the middle and never going west. Although Britannia's got the départ this year. 40.5 Ks, 432 meters of climbing, big gaps, Pog, TT God in the Tour de France on stage 20. No one will be comfortable, Benji. Neither Roglic, nor Pogačar, nor, say, Bernal's a bit ahead. No one will be comfortable. Anything can happen on this TT. So hopefully the GC contenders all make it here, all within about a minute and a half of each other. It would be great to see. But yeah, GC, personally, I think Van Aert's the favourite for this stage, by the way. Just put that out there.
Yeah, I agree. But I also think that Pogačar could just beat him in the same way that he did at the start of Tour de France
stage 5.
21, stage 5. Now, what I love about this parkour is that it's kind of a hellish time trial, 35 kilometers of relatively false flat downhill all throughout, with some rollers in between. And then you realize, we're going down. So fun. But then you start getting uphills again. And that's where you will have trouble and where you will not be enjoying it. And that's where Roglic on paper fits the Olympic time trial, that part of the parkour, those hills held. But I bet the guy he's got to be mentally scarred from the stage 20 still. I don't see how you get over that Planche de Belleville so easily, like the mindset of it. But I hope that we get to see them fight again on stage 20, and who knows, Roglic might be able to upset the Nightmare and go the other way around and take bogey this time around on this parkour. But it's certainly a time trial that I do love the parkour of. And I enjoyed that the latest spot. The last 2 kilometers are slightly uphill as well, so that it makes it even more tense towards the finish line. But by this point, we probably already know who won the Tour de France 5 kilometers before the line anyway, because they're showing it in the middle of the stage, you know?
Yeah, 3 intermediates before the final in the 40k TT. What I want to ask is there enough balance here, Benji? Does this course give a Bernal a chance to win? I think it does. I think given what he showed on that Vuelta stage TT, where he lost 150. Now 150 it's a shit ton, and he could be losing 2 minutes easy to Rog and Pog on this TT. Plus add another 20 and change in the prologue plus TT
minutes.
No. Is there enough high? I guess he does have, though, Benji, the proper high altitude stages in the Alps to try and make it up. But 2.5 minutes, it's hard to make that up anywhere.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be difficult for him to make that up, but I think it might depend mostly on the fact on whether his high altitude climbing is at his peak level ever, and whether the Slovenians are perhaps a bit under that, because on paper, I don't see an issue in this Grand Tour at all for the likes of Pogacar. Roglic, not necessarily either, although the cobble stage is something I've got an asterisk with for him, because you never know at this point. He doesn't have the, his crash proneness is more than Pogacar, let's say it like that. I don't want to mean something mean to the guy, because he's a wonderful cyclist, but that's the case in the races we've seen so far. But I think this is a bogey parkour. I don't want to shout it so early, but I did so for the previous 2 years, and I think that Pogacar has a perfect parkour to make it a hat trick.
Yeah, I think so. I think he'll go in favourite. My big concern, just like it was this year, and it wasn't really exploited, was, and it remains, his team. I don't see Bennett and Soler moving the needle too much, particularly. In fact, I see Micah as above Bennett if he can return to if Bennett doesn't go back to his 2020 level, although Almeida is the huge one. Do you run Almeida as a second GC threat here, or is he pure Dom? I think you run him as a faux second GC threat. He's got the TT. He will be close. I think he's a really, really good second guy to have for UAE, and it makes Pogacar so much harder to beat.
Yeah, and if you look at how Itzulia was written, do you think that McNulty has no chance here to be a co-leader as well in this parkour? Because on paper, no? I think he's a good cobbler. That's why I'm looking at this.
They can't. I just don't see it. Maybe he's a young guy, keeps improving, good TT. I think he'll be close after the prologue. And even that punchy 220k stage, I think he's actually really good at that sort of stage and can surprise people with his punch, like he showed at Dauphiné, where he came third behind Colbrelli and Aaron Baru. But the high mountains back-to-back, he just has not shown that he can do that yet. Whereas, Almeida has inconsistency too, but he's shown more. That stage where he finished behind Dan Martin in the Giro, that's a high-level climbing performance in the high mountains. And the way he paces climbs is perfect as a domestique. It's one speed, steady. You saw it at Catalunya when Thomas was sitting on him while he was chasing Yates. I think it's just the perfect addition for UAE and makes them hard to beat. Whereas Jumbo, I think, are going to have to keep Jonas as a second threat there as well, Benji, and they can run him as a second threat.
Certainly, time trial fits him as well, same way that Almeida has that effect as well on UAE. I don't know how much we can trust Vingegaard and also Almeida on the extreme high altitude stages, because if I remember at the last spot of the Giro 2019,
Yeah, Stelvio Almeida struggled there.
What year are we? 2021. So 2020, the Stelvio year, he started struggling in the high altitude. I don't remember the altitude levels of the last week of the 2021 Giro, so I can't tell you whether that was extremely high and as a consequence was not fitting. But he was also dropping, I think, in the descent of the second last climb before Apimota, I think, this year. But when it comes to Vingegaard, we didn't really have super high altitude in the Tour de France 2021. We had one stage or two stages that went above 2K, but it wasn't anything extreme. It was the one in Andorra, but the finish line was not lying at that level and so forth. So I don't know, that Andorra region, I don't trust it anymore, I'm afraid.
What I want is Mark Padun in the break on stage 18. I think he can win the stage by 5 minutes on Alticam,
Mate,
seriously.
they've got GC riders.
I think Vuelta, he turned around, waited for Jack. Maybe in the Tour, their earpiece stopped working. And yeah, they go for the stage. I don't know. I'm not sure Alticam stage is one that Bahrain will be focusing on for GC anyway. But yeah, I want to see Padun at the Tour. Please make it happen. And then we obviously have the Champs-Elysees. We forgot to even mention it. Champs-Elysees finish, 112K ceremony with the final sprint between probably Edvald Bosenhagen, Peter Sagan, and maybe Tord Hushovd if he gets picked up. Like, more sprinters will be left here at this point.
Cipollini arrives.
I think Wout van Aert probably wins this stage again because he's obviously on, he'll be freed. So I think it's a good parkour. I'm pretty excited by it. I'm glad there won't be hopefully huge gaps by the first rest day, but after the 2 Alpine stages, there could be some pretty big gaps before the third week. I give it I'm pretty happy with it. What about you, Benji? Any final thoughts on it?
I've got a final thought as by the fact that just by going through this, it reminds us how little sprint stages they have on this parkour, which means that when you bring a Jacobsen to this parkour, it's unlikely that he's going to win green as a consequence, because how is he going to do it? I don't know. He's got 2.7 sprint stages by your calculation.
Yes.
And I do feel like that calculation is right. And is he going to stay after stage 4, knowing that the latter part of this Grand Tour has one stage that is likely going to go to the breakaway as well? I don't know. I don't feel like that's something that I do expect him to do. And then I'm thinking, well, who's going to go for green? Yes, a Philipsen could go, but then Merlier can't be hunting for the stage in week 1, because otherwise that deficit will be too huge in my eyes. And then the candidate that I arrived to is also Sagan, but there's an issue with Wout van Aert. We mentioned already, like, if I look at this parkour, Wout van Aert can win green relatively easily. I believe that's the case if he goes 100% for it. But Jumbo should not do that, because in Jumbo's eyes, yellow is much more important than green. If I'm the team manager of Jumbo, I don't want that to happen, but Wout van Aert's 27. He's going to start thinking about personal goals. In August 2021, he said that the green jersey is one of his 3 goals for 2022. Is that still the case? We don't know, but the parkour is perfect for it, hands down.
And the stages, like there's some of the stages there are perfect for him, be it break or whatever. I think that's the problem, and that's something they're going to be discussing within Jumbo-Visma with their sponsors, with their management and Plugger deciding how they're going to do this, because I think trying to balance it is very, very difficult and dangerous. If you look back at the Tour de France 2020, it sounds it's obviously complete hindsight, but the stage Wout even won in stage 7, where he actually got to sit in when they split Pogacar, and Koos and Bennett and co pulled, and not very well. And it was FDJ pulling on the flat in that crosswind stage, and Wout protected himself for the final sprint. If he pulls there, do they gain another 15, 20 seconds? Yep. It's that sort of stuff which it's on the margins, but that's what wins Grand Tours in the yellow jersey, particularly if it's so tight between Pog and Rob, who are so close. So, yeah, I think Dumoulin, Benji, the Giro might have a lot of TTKs. I don't know. Dumo in the Tour 2020 made some bad decisions. Obviously, physically, he's perfect.
But he was tactically clever compared to the decision that the bad decision that we saw in the race from Jumbo were the ones that he was talking about in Team Buzz as well after the race. And yeah, so I feel like he's a good influence when it comes to his intelligence in the race.
I don't know. Stage 8, he decided to just hard pace.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't know about that one. But yeah, I take your point also. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Yes.
I want Magnus Cort Nielsen to hunt for green on this one by going in the breakaway on every bloody transitioning stage and go for top 10s in all the flat sprint stages. And as a consequence, perhaps even in the time trials, picking up a few points. Probably not.
Colbrelli green?
Though.
or which Alpine stage is he winning? Instead, yeah.
What that come?
It's almost like a complete reverse of this
Megev.
year's parkour. Yeah, seriously, Megev, like if that's a break, or even from the GC group. But yeah, it's the complete opposite of the Green Jersey battle from how I see it in this year. But yeah, that's our route analysis. We hope you enjoyed it. Let us know what you think down below. Obviously, we're a year out, but don't let that stop you from giving your complete GC podium predictions for the tour. Even though we have no idea who's
every
attending.
stage.
Every stage winner, like I've tried to do and got a spreadsheet. I'm pretty sure I said Wout was going to win yellow last year. No, I didn't actually say that. I said it should be a second GC.
What's your podium?
I'm going back with Roglic. I think Roglic first, Pogacar second.
We do this every year.
Yeah, I still believe. I don't know, third. Haig third.
Okay, I'm going to go for Pogacar winning. I think that Roglic... I want to put Roglic second, but I also feel like that's hard because I think getting second again might be annoying, so perhaps that might be a bit more or less of a nightmare, even though second is a better result at the end. And third in this race is what? I find it difficult to find a third rider in this race in the other teams, because if we look at Bora and we look at their team, we've got Bennett who's bringing an entire sprint train. We've got Vlasov, Higuita, and so forth. I don't see Vlasov doing it here. I'm sorry, but
Vlasov's in Monaco. He's just running around Monaco right now. That big Bora, that Bora paycheck.
Vincenzo Nibali is going to come back from the dead. He's going to see that cobble stage. The shark will rise, and he's going to take 20 minutes on the cobble stage and then lose everything by the last day. And on the Champs-Elysees, he will lose a sprint. The bonus seconds will bring Pogacar the victory. Roglic will beat him in the sprint. And as a consequence, we've got Pogacar, Roglic, and Vincenzo Nibali. Okay, is that good?
This is what will happen. Someone like Ciccone will lose 5 minutes on the cobbled stage. He'll get allowed in a medium mountain break and take back all the time again. And then Ciccone will somehow fall backwards into third. Seriously, that could happen.
Or Guillaume Martin does that, but the way he falls back is because he's got a jacket open in the last descent of this entire Tour de France.
You seen that TT?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I do love the top 10 battle though. Like Louis Meintjes is, he actually should come top 10 on this parkour with those high mountains. He actually should. But yeah.
One name that I do want to ask you about is, if you look at the Tour de France 2018 cobble stage, we've got these proper mountain stages as well. Geraint Thomas won that. We had him performing pretty well at Tour de Suisse last year.
Giro.
Okay, you're already shaking your head at the moment. Okay. But Pidcock is going to do GC at the Giro, mate. Come on.
I just don't see why you wouldn't send Thomas to the Giro when it could have quite a weak start list and rumoured to have 70 kilometres of time trialling. And I like him on the steady 20K, 5% climbs, cold and wet conditions. Yeah. Crashing aside, physiologically, he seems quite resistant to them. Looking at Romandy this year, so Giro seems the easy one to me there. But that leaves out, you have a 53K TT Tour de France. Sending Bernal and Yates to that is it's a tough ask. But I don't know. And those two didn't get on too well, it seems, at the Vuelta. But it's an interesting parkour nonetheless. If you've liked the episode, make sure to like it down below on YouTube. Give us a review or a rating on podcast players. Thanks for the call for supporting the podcast, and we'll see you at some point in the future. Ciao.